Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay. Welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha First Pass, First Impressiones coverage for the How Are Priests. And if you've been following along with the overall series, of course, this will be the last video in this junket. This is it. All, 48 of them are done for now. So there'll be some other coverage and other videos that I have ideas for. And if you, of course, are listening to this right now, and you have an idea, or would like to see a certain type of video from me, then let me know in the comments on this video down below. Or, of course, on any other previous video. There's a couple of suggestions I've seen there. But I have a few. We won't really start the beta second pass coverage for some time yet. We are waiting for changes to happen. Mostly Shadow Priest changes. Oh boy. But again, if you have been following along this whole time, thank you very much for all the continued support, the growth in the channel, and sharing my coverage around. Because if you're new and each video has roughly a 50-50 subscribed to unsubscribed amount, then consider hitting that subscribe button here on YouTube. By the time Shadowlands comes out, it would be really great if I could hit 100,000 subscribers here on the platform. YouTube will send me one of those play buttons and be like, hey, you've been on the platform for 8 years and now you finally exist. Hooray. But that's just a personal goal. Of course, your viewership herein and your feedback, comments, some of them a little bit less so, are all greatly appreciated for me trying to figure out if I'm on the mark for these, if I'm soaked up the right information for them. Additionally, the footage you're seeing in the background here is going to be from the Discipline Priest. It's always the last priest that I play in each of the junkets itself. But if you want to watch the video, the dungeon video with comms, then of course check the description box down below. It'll have the dungeon run VOD there, as well as the link to my channel guide. The channel guide therein, of course, has all the links to every single video, all the VODs, all the dungeon runs, all of the wrap-up videos, and it also has the previous 2 expansions worth if you want to take a trip back in time and look at where Discipline was going from Warlords to Legion, or Legion to BFA, or any of the other previous classes as well. So go check that out down below if you'd like. There's hundreds of videos if you really want to dive into it. But the priest overall, I felt like the slight changes to Discipline and Holy are definitely just enough to feel that now with the borrowed power system, they're not going to feel like they've been left in the dust. Again, there's still something missing with the extra ranks in their dungeon and in their spell book journal, which could be that extra rank for Fade, the one that lowers your aggro radius, which is a little bit kind of meh. Some people were wondering if the additional Atonement uptime Azurite trait that a Discipline uses right now would be rolled in as an extra rank, because it's just enough, like it's an extra GCD-ish to help you with it. There's been some talk and some wondering, why doesn't Evangelism just become a baseline spell? Maybe increase the cooldown just a little bit, but so much revolves around Evangelism. There's definitely some out there that I've seen and read about that the choice between Light's Caress and Luminous Barrier is a little bit meh. Even though I think the idea is that you have one that's spread, you have one that's stacked, and you have one that's multi-purpose in Evangelism if you have big ramp moments. And the big ramp moments and the change to Shadow Covenant does look like it could really give Sins of the Many a run for its money. Contrition is fine, it's just a little weak. It's the same kind of thing with Castigation. Those are the 2 talents that came up a lot for the Discipline Priest. Contrition, Castigation, and a little bit of Shield Discipline, that are all the ones that are just like, they're there and they're like, but they're not really that extra bit of oomph. The thoughts on Castigation was that it would increase the amount of RPPM or chances you have to proc your Power of Darkness, whatever it's called. What is this thing called? Yeah, Power of the Dark Side, to get more empowered penance casts, both for offensive and defensive purposes. That one's a neat one. I brought up the Thorns Shield Discipline, where a portion of the powered shield damage is reflected back at the person that deals damage to the powered shield. So you could actually add damage to it. It wouldn't be Atonement, but it would still give you some damage, because Mindbender and Solace both give damage. And then Contrition is just, normally it's just very weak, but I think the problem is that it's just free healing on Discipline Priest's ramp. That I wonder if it can't really get any stronger. But I'm not sure. The Shadow Covenant change seems really fun, as long as just Schism isn't a set and forget, which I wonder, does Schism need to go down to like a 30% bonus? Because Twisted Fate is only active for 35% of a boss fight, whereas Schism is active every 24 seconds, and it's a 40-second bump for 9 seconds. It's a lot. But I went over that, of course, in the Discipline Priest video a little bit more in depth about how the Shadow Covenant sort of play feels. And of course, it just, the dungeon footage that you're watching in the background is going to be a lot of me drinking. I'm going to cut out some of it because we recorded way more than I'll need for this talking head piece right here. But man, oh man, I was mana hungry in that dungeon. Man, I'm wearing garbage gear and all I have is those ecstatic trinkets and stuff. But Discipline still remains very mana hungry. And it's weird. It makes sense, but it's still kind of weird. If you go back to the Holy video or the Discipline video itself, the Discipline, gotta put that C in there. The Holy Priest actually did more damage, was doing more damage over the course of the entire run in that dungeon. Now I was on purpose trying to do a lot of damage, so I was kind of not healing all the time. So it makes sense because the Discipline Priest has to heal via damage, whereas Holy just deals damage. But the Holy Priest got so many additional DPS-oriented buttons, and Discipline got a couple. Mind Blast, Mind Seer. Mind Seer only single target atonements, though. It isn't AoE atonement. I kind of wonder if they should just put like a target cap of 3 or 5 and then let it AoE atonement, but that might be too strong. But it could be for Mythic Plus. But then Discipline is already good at Mythic Plus because already is a healer that does damage while healing. So where's the trade-off there? I don't know. There's like something like, eh. But overall, the Priest stuff felt... it felt pretty good. I think that Divine Star and Halo, I did remember this and I totally forgot about it when we were talking about Holy Priest, is Divine Star is normally used for fishing for Surge of Light procs. And same thing with Halo, but Divine Star is just way more often. Because each time you have a heal, your healing spells have an 8% chance to make your next flash heal instant and cost no mana. I get that, but those are talent synergies. My only basis is that almost every single spell on the Holy Priest has the Serendipity Holy Words synergy, which I guess that means its base spells have that, not talented spells. But then that also brings up the argument that Divine Star and Halo aren't even that strong to be talented spells. So that if they're not strong enough to warrant their button press outside of the Divine Star Surge of Light synergy, without Circle of Healing being baseline, now you have Prayer Circle there, which is a old bonus you used to have on the Serendipity Healing or Holy Word kind of synergy back in the day, where you get to cast Circle of Healing instantly and then get a faster cast Prayer of Healing. Then it's just, there are a couple of weird things for the Priest that I think that's the one thing I took away from this. There's still a few talent hooks that could just be sanded down a little bit to be a little more smooth. I don't think there's anything wrong with a couple of those rough edges still being there if a lot of other parts of the kit are really good. There's other points of feedback that I've read about that I've heard, like Angelic Feather. Why is it not just baseline? That's a weird one because having that much mobility on a immobile class is very important. So having it set and forget, and I showed off like a macro to just self-cast herself for Angelic Feather, even if that's now part of the base game. Which leads me to, there was a forum post that Sios made that more people have added to, showing off how a lot of self-casting modifiers with AoE target circles, such as Barrier or Angelic Feather, can now just be baseline Alt, Control, or Shift autocast on yourself, which is a nice quality of life baseline. But it's not something that's going to totally change the game because you can just still make the macros for it and know that the macro is going to work. But some of that functionality is now core. It's just, it's weird when you put Perseverance, Angel's Mercy, Angelic Feather, or Angelic Feather, Masochism, Body and Soul. Body and Soul is really good for Discipline because they use a lot of Powered Shield, which Powered Shield is back for Holy Priest, but it's really just like barely better than a Flash Heal. Just barely better. It's almost the exact same amount of healing, but it's instant and it costs just slightly less mana. but obviously it has a 7.5 second cooldown on each individual person from weakened soul. And the damage reduction priesty stuff, obviously Discipline has the 1 stack focus will, Holy Priest has 2 stacked focus will. Wait to be hit in the face for that to work, and it's very PvP focused. But like Perseverance and Masochism are the 2 DRs you can leave on yourself, which I'm sure can get utilized in certain situations because they are uptime is 100% of the time, as long as you hit yourself with the Shadowman, hit yourself with a Renew. But there's no damage reduction. And I did see the YouTube comment that came out a couple days ago saying that Holy Priest can basically DR themselves, quote unquote, damage reduction themselves with Guardian Angel and Big Angel Wings with Guardian Spirit. But that's not a damage reduction. I realize that if you use it on yourself to heal yourself from more to survive damage and don't die, and then Guardian Angel gives you the cooldown reduction back to 1 minute, sure. That makes sense. It also can make sense if you don't get hit by massive damage. So if you die, the Guardian Spirit will save you and give you that 40% of your maximum health heal, but then of course goes on the full cooldown of 3 minutes. Also, it's not necessarily a damage reduction. Like Perseverance is a damage reduction, right? You take 10% less damage. But even Angel's Mercy, the HP bump isn't really a damage reduction either. Because if you were going to, and of course using Guardian Spirit on just yourself, when you don't have the old Legion functionality where you put it on someone and you get wings too. Whereas other healers, Shaman, they can put down Spirit Link and survive things. They can link themselves, but they also still have Astral Shift. And Paladins, of course, they can lay on hands themselves through damage, but they also still have Divine Protection and Divine Shield. And Priest has none of that. Monk can, I guess, bubble themselves, but Monk got Fortifying Brew baseline. So they have an actual Last Stand plus damage reduction in their core kit. So not every healer, and then of course, Druid. Druid has Barkskin, they have Bear Form, they had Frenzied Regen, they have the APPAREL, they can do Affinity and do Guardian Affinity, and then do Heart of the Wild, all this other stuff, right? That just for right? And Priest, Holy Discipline themselves are still the healer that doesn't have an actual damage reduction. Which, sure, you're a healer, you heal yourself, right? Forehead. Discipline will usually always have Atonement on themselves. They're always healing themselves. They keep that uptime on themselves. They should at least. I probably don't always in the footage behind me. But I was also trying out, like, what if I have to catch up and have to use Shadowmans? And what if I have to, like, preemptive with a bunch of Raptures? And what if I just Rapture spam? Like, how do certain things feel with setting up for, like, Shadow Covenant heals? Or what if I use Shadow Covenant only offensively and I use it for a little bit of a heal and then I just go in and do DPS? There's a couple of times I do that. You might see it in the footage that you've been watching for the past 13 or so minutes. So I'm not trying to like be like crazy, oh, Mythic Plus style, every global is throughput or damage, right? We're in Discord, we're chit-chatting it up, we're talking about things, we're probably talking about Shadow Priests again. So that's not the point of the footage here and what the video is supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a summary of all the thoughts and things and other points of feedback that you guys have put forward, which again, of course, still continue that because the feedback junket that I'll be doing later on in June to hopefully get a whole bunch of really concise, very to the point, static-free feedback for Blizzard to hopefully get into their faces, get into Brian's eyeballs, will be the goal later on this month. But there's a couple other things I have here that I have highlighted in my notes as I ramble on. I'll bring this up in this overall video because I only brought it up in the previous one because Discipline may have the biggest synergy for this sort of support style. And if you know, I just said support, so you're like, oh, here we go again. So the Night Fae Covenant ability, Fae Blessings, and I'll just read out what I put in my notes. It's a very real potential that this air quotes support class role will become a thing for priests overall. However, it's easier as Discipline because of Rapture, considering how much either mana or resource generation you can give back to a member of your group or raid team. The combination of Rapture or Circle of Healing to Prayer of Healing spam seems a little bit scary. You can funnel a lot of extra power into one or a few other players, and it's something you'll definitely either really enjoy as a priest or you'll hate as a priest, because you also might not want to go Night Fae. But then are you going to be quote unquote trolling your raid team because you're not Night Fae? If you go Night Fae though, you get the freaking Vulpine Blinky Fox form, which means you don't have to take Angelic Feather because you already have an extra mobility tool there. So you can take things like Masochism, right, for your extra DR, or take things like Perseverance. So maybe it is a good idea for you to go. But then the play style around it is definitely two different sides of the track situation coming in the World of Warcraft Shadowlands expansion for priests specifically, where can you imagine using your Rapture cooldown with Fae Blessings and then just spamming 7 or 8 Power Word Shields into a Breath of Syndragosa Frost Death Knight to keep giving them 20%, or in this case it would give them 20 runic power per global cooldown? And that could be a really good power point. That could be something that guilds could plan around, because that support utility really hasn't been in this game. There's a couple other Covenant abilities that are doing that too, but they're very sparse. I think Word Up was talking about that in one of our like post dungeon run like chit chat sessions, which the last like week or 2 weeks worth of dungeon runs have done the dungeon, and then we've sort of talked a bit. If you see a roughly hour-long dungeon VOD, then there's like an extra 15 or 20 minutes of like discussion after it that I left in that cut so that we didn't lose that really good discussion point. And I think Word Up Senpai brought up the fact that it's neat and good and interesting that there are some support role pieces coming to different specs or classes and have better synergy with them in Shadowlands. The weirdness about when stuff like this happens in World of Warcraft is how required will it become? How degenerate could it be? Again, a note on priests is you have power infusion as well, which I think for Holy and Shadow, easily giving it to someone else, not a big deal. But Disciplined Priest having their own power infusion seems very, very strong. But then what if you're playing Discipline and you keep being asked to play Fae Blessings and funnel this person and give them power infusion? But you're like, but it's my cooldown to use. So I think it really comes down to your guild structure, the architecture they're in, and how your guild deals with these certain situations when they come up. And if they're okay with you playing Priest and not going Night Fae because they don't think you're just trolling, right? Some kind of argument if you're playing a lot of immobile DPS, if you don't go Night Fae or Venthyr for their 2 mobility tools, then, oh, you're trolling, you'll re-roll your character. Which also, the whole thing comes back to how cosmetics and power and mobility being tied together is just going to be weird. The suggestion I threw out there was, we're going to see it in like patch 9.2, 9.25, I bet you, is that Ian's going to just go like, okay, for the last year, it's been just a complete thorn in our side. So in this next patch, there'll be a quest line in Oribos to have a unifying stone, or have this like the heart of the Shadowlands, which is going to be an item that either you equip on yourself, like a ring, for example, a legendary ring that allows you to have an interface kind of like the Heart of Azeroth, where once you have completed or have a certain rep with all 4 of the regular covenants, you're able to pick which major covenant ability you use and which minor covenant ability you use. Major being the class-based or spec-based one, like the DPS-y one, and then the minor being the mobility or the signature ability. I'm foreseeing it right now. It's gonna happen, and at that point we'll be like, wow, Shadowlands is so good. It's the customers. I can use the Venthyr door, but then the Necrolord offensive ability, or I can use Fae Blessings, but then I can take, you know, the Necrolord shield if I need that for whatever, right? I really feel that's gonna happen. And for the first year, first 2.5 or so tiers of this game, we're gonna have a really frustrating point where we're like, oh, I might as well roll 4 classes to make 1 in each covenant, and then do I also make 3 more WoW accounts so that I split them all apart and can multi-box them all at the same time, so I don't have to keep doing the exact same thing 4 different individual times in a row to save myself time and sanity? That could be a thing. And this all comes about because of covenant abilities like this that are very strong and are interesting in that support style, but they're only so spread out that if you don't have those, are you losing something huge for your group? And there's 2 points on this that I want to bring up. So Ripple in Space, or Ripple in Time, or whatever, the current major essence you can use that actually does a teleport style ability, or the sort of bard support build that you can run with Conflict and Strife and Thunder Charged on Shaman right now, specifically Enhancement. It's referred to as the simp build, but that is just really degenerate, and like it's a toxic way to talk about it. It's the bard build because you're buffing someone else, and the bard style supporty thing is very much something that WoW hasn't had for a very long time. In Burning Crusade, and obviously going back to vanilla, Shamans and Paladins were definitely support classes, and they stayed that way for the launch of the game and then one expansion after, and then changed in Wrath of the Lich King. But the Bard, Shaman, or the Major Essence that allows you to blink are in the game right now, and you don't see them used all that much. You see them sometimes being propped up on Warcraft logs here and there when you get the parse whores, you want to call them now, like the people that are going for only their parse. But that's usually like a guild decision. I remember I've been doing a lot of transmog farming recently. I remember going back to Nazgrim before Warcraft logs. I think that was probably World of Logs back then. Didn't really have the squelching and the blacklisting, whitelisting of what counts in an encounter for parsing. More recently, of course, now Kira controls that rather well. But if you go back to like Nazgrim and Siege of Orgrimmar, you get one person to parse each week or each raid clear that basically got to AoE all the room that Nazgrim pulls with, and no one else got to AoE. And that's a guild decision, and this kind of stuff is kind of fun. It's kind of fun. If you don't do that in your guild, and that your guild ecology and guild structure doesn't, put that forward, then maybe you won't need to go Fae Blessings, because it won't really matter. But if you're a guild that's going to push really high, and the discussion comes up that, can you go Fae Blessings, and we want all of our priests to go Night Fae, then maybe it becomes a thing that you all, for the purposes of endgame rating, for Mythic rating, maybe Mythic plus keys, I don't know if that'll be that good in that one. But definitely for Mythic rating, it seems like it could be a very strong balancing tipping point for you in your priesty choice. What else we got here? I have any other highlighted notes? The Shadow Word Death not triggering Atonement for Discipline. It's kind of a weird one. I get it, but also Shadow Word Death doesn't really hit that hard. It definitely hits hard when you Shadow Covenant and Schism, which is a neat trade-off, but obviously it hits 40 plus 25% stronger. It hits you in the face for that much damage as well, unless it gets the kill. It's okay for adding extra damage. You gotta make sure you're definitely powered shielding yourself, because you're gonna slap yourself in the face for quite a bit of damage. I think I had one more thing in here from, a lot of it is notes from public about Shadow Priest, and the real backbone of Shadow Priest have a few core points that I really think we can fine-tune later on in June. But Shadow Word Void, that functionality for Mind Blast should just be baseline. I agree. And Lingering Insanity, the talent on the 45 row, should also just be part of how Void Form works. It just should be. Now, Lingering Insanity my put forward is that it actually would decay every 2 seconds instead of every 3 seconds as a talent, because you'd baseline it, so you're going to make it a little bit weaker. And Shadow Word Void, which is weird to me that Shadow Word Void actually does more damage than Shadow Word, I guess on Mind Blast, which is a strange one, because usually the base spell should do more, but it doesn't. It's 120% spell power, and Void is 130. But the thing is that Void's recharge rate is on the GCD at the 1.5 divisible, so it's easier to use in the rotation than the new Mind Blast, because they mess up the GCD there with the new Mind Blast rank. But they can fix that, I'm sure. And those two big things. The new thing is to not do the new Void Bolt passive where you can cast it while channeling Mind Flay. That's a big yikes. Mostly a huge yikes. So we'll see if that one gets readjusted, because the feedback from that one has been rather uproarious. It's not been great. Other than that, other than those couple of those base ones, hopefully we can get for Shadow Priest. The other one I put forward in the Shadow Priest video is that you need a baseline cooldown, a la Dark Ascension being just a cooldown you have. Because look at Insanity is very similar to the Eclipse window, kind of, with Balance Druid. they yo-yo into one, yo-yo back into the other. They yo-yo lunar, they yo-yo solar. They go back and forth between them. But then they also have a major cooldown, right? They have a big cooldown to essentially hasten that or enable one to be stronger for a time that they're in that they choose. Right? If they're AoE and cleaving, they can lock in for Starfire for a while. Or if they're blasting, they can go lunar, or they go solar for their solar wrath. And that is something the Shadow Priest doesn't have. And it feels bad if your cycles on Shadow Priest don't match up on encounters, in dungeons, and wherever else that you're playing. So if you had a baseline cooldown that sort of locked you in the void form for 25 seconds with no drain, where you just got to go, you get to keep building up haste and haste and haste and haste and go, right? And then you come out of that with full insanity, so you can go right back in for the one that teeter-totters. You basically get this like nice, almost like 1 minute, maybe 45 seconds of quote unquote, uninterrupted-ish void form where you get to go. And then of course that could be a 2-minute cooldown. And then by default, you're still doing the back and forth, the inside, outside void form, in, out kind of deal. And I wonder if that would be something that would be really helpful, that the Shadow Priest community could utilize and feel better about playing. Also, Death and Madness is the better version of how Shadow Word Death should work, but that's neither here nor there. That's a tiny one. The other ones are really more core. But hopefully you've enjoyed the coverage that I have put forward. Again, thank you very much for all of your input, feedback. We're going to be doing another thing. Make sure you have me over on Twitch at FinalBossTV, because the feedback junket will be about a 2-week period starting later on this month, the end of June. We're going back through everything again and trying to collate and coagulate and collect all the different feedback points to make a really succinct 1-page per spec feedback. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, and if you would like to, the button is right there. And it helps me out grow the YouTube channel. And hopefully YouTube one day will be like, hey, this Final Boss guy, this Bay guy, he's been doing this for a long time. Let's give him that one of those play buttons, so his channel looks a little more legitimate. But my name's been Bay. Thank you very much for listening, watching, giving feedback. I appreciate you. And I will talk to you all soon when the extra sporadic coverage comes up. Of course, I'll be on stream, or I will see you all in the second pass. Thank you for listening.